Thank you, everyone. God is still in charge. I am thankful that God is still in charge. Can you say that to the person beside you? God is still in charge.
God is still in charge.
Oh yes, He is still in charge. Even when we're not. Even if we do not agree with what's happening. Even if many people are still hurting. Many people are, can you feel me? If not, good luck. Welcome to the family, my dear friends. Let's continue further our study with the book of Jonah. Let's read it from chapter 3. Can you flash it on the screen? Verse 5 to 9. Are you there?
Yes.
Let's read it together. The people of Nineveh believed God's message, and from the greatest to the least, they declared a fast and put on to show their sorrow. When the king of Nineveh heard that Jonah was saying, he stepped down from his throne and took off his royal robes. He dressed himself in burlap, sackcloth, and sat on a heap of ashes. Then the king and his nobles sent this decree throughout the city. No one, not even the animals from your herds and flocks, may eat or drink anything at all. Pati yung animals, ano? People and animals alike must wear garments of mourning, and everyone must pray earnestly to God. They must turn from their evil ways and stop all the violence. Who can tell? Can everybody say, who can tell?
Who can tell?
In other versions of the Bibles, it says, who knows? That's a very cool line in the Bible. Who knows? Who can tell? You can never can tell. And yet, perhaps, continue, perhaps even yet God will change His mind and hold back His fierce anger from destroying us. Who knows? Who can tell? A very reluctant prophet. He was in a different intention. He prayed, or I think in the passive-aggressive tone, he wished that his preaching would not work. The 3 days of Nineveh, he just went around for one day and just preached a very short sermon. And yet, the Ninevites repented. Nineveh, you can compare it to Sodom and Gomorrah in Genesis. Very cruel nation, very sinful, very far away from God. Sino nakaka-relate? And they would have been very evil people. And yet, again, they listened. The king put out the decree. The people repented. The king said, not just the people, but also the animals. Imagine mo, the animals, wala namang kaalam-alam. Nag-fast them for 40 days. I don't know how they did it. But remember, it's not a historical book. It's a satire story. So I hope you're learning today. What are we learning here? The sovereignty of God. He is still in control. Jonah wanted to sabotage God's plan. And yet, God is still in control. And yet, God worked miracles through His partial obedience. Have you ever had a time when you didn't want to, but yet you obeyed? And God showed beauty, great things out of your partial obedience. Maybe today you woke up, you didn't want to go to church. And yet, you woke up, dressed yourself up, kahit walang ligo, masyado maaga. You brave through the traffic, the commute, the parking, and yet you're still here. Kasi pinilit ako ng asawa ko. God can turn our bad into good. Jonah's intention was malicious so that God's will cannot save. He was hoping that Nineveh would eventually be destroyed. But why not? Because it's so evil. But he didn't want God to show mercy to the Ninevites. But God is different. God is so good. God can take what was meant for evil and turn it into good. Just like what happened in Joseph the Dreamer's story. It was so beautiful. The Bible is a collection of books. It's not just one set of books. It's just one book. It is a collection of different books, and I'm happy to see that it's all interconnected. There are hyperlinks from one over the other. That was said in Genesis 50 verse 20. We'll say that again next week. That God can, what was meant for evil, God can turn it into good. Many centuries later, St. Paul said that also in Romans 8:28. Who can remember? One of my favorite passages. Many of you also this is one of your favorite passages. All things will work for good to those who love God. Can you say to the person beside you, it will work for good? So again, God can turn our bad into good. But how does God do it? Does He force us? He just allowed a Jonah to go ahead, be passive aggressive, and there was still enough little bit obedience in him. Guys, is God calling you to obey His will? Even just little. Even if nagrereklamo ka, sige lang. Go ahead and obey. No matter how small. Just like the 5 loaves and 2 fish, it fed the multitudes. His very imperfect act of obedience fed the multitudes. It saved a city. Want to save our country? Obey the Lord. You want to save your organization, your family, even if sometimes it hurts you or you are not so into it, obey God. God can do great things even in our little ways, even in our little obediences. We like searching for bad in the good. We imperfect people, we like searching for the bad things in the good. But God is showing us in this story, God is different. He always looks for good, even in the bad. How many here are in bad situations in their lives? Konti lang. God will turn it into good. Believe in Him. God, believe in Him. So let's go to the ending of this chapter. Can God really change His mind? So let's continue. Read it on the verse together. When God saw what they had done and how they had put a stop to their evil ways, read it aloud.
He changed his mind and did not carry out the destruction he had threatened.
Wait, did God really change His mind? It gives us it's a crazy thing to imagine. God changes His mind. The all-powerful God who knows everything, who knows the depths of our heart, who knows our sins, who knows the passive and aggressive tone of Jonah. Does God change His mind? Well, it actually gives us an idea about our intercessory prayers. Pray for someone, pray for something. Yes, continue to pray so. Continue to pray so. In the other Bible stories, again, hyperlinks from one book of the Bible to another, the other Bible stories hinted about this. For example, the story of Abraham, when he kind of negotiated with God about Sodom and Gomorrah, when he said, how about 50 people, good righteous people, will you not destroy it? And God said, sure. how about 45? Will you not destroy it? Sure. And it goes to, how about 40? Sure. How about 30? Sure. 20. And eventually went to 10. And God did not change his tone. God did not change his plan. He said, sure, if you can find 10 people, it will not be destroyed. But if you go and look through it, Abraham stopped at 10. What if Abraham, this is a side story, what if Abraham asked the question, what if there's only one? Well, God said yes. Would he allow it? Maybe. Maybe. We wouldn't know. But again, one more example of God's mercy is when Moses interceded to God to have mercy to his people of Israel because they worshiped the golden calf. Many stories of intercession, many stories of God seem to be changing his mind. And both of these stories, plus the story of Jonah, maybe it says about convincing God to be consistent with what? I don't think this is... the Bible authors, I think it's not so much about God changing his mind, but it is in a very mysterious way. It is God inviting us to be part of the journey, to be part of his decision making. That by praying, we realize the depths of his love, the depths of his mercy. We begin to see who God really is, how merciful he is, how loving he is. And it is us learning, seeing, experiencing it. Do you remember Jonah's 5-word sermon? He said, in 40 days from now, Nineveh will be destroyed. In the original Hebrew version, the word translated to destroy was the word habak. Can you say habak? Hindi tabak, habak. But that word is more accurately translated as overturn. Can you say overturn?
Overturn.
Do you see the miracle? I want you to see the miracle here. Instead of God overturning Nineveh into rubble to be destroyed, God decided, God overturned the hearts of people to him. He did not overturn the stones of the city into rubble. He overturned the hearts of stone to come to him, to see his mercy. Do you feel sinful? Do you feel so depressed? Do you feel so down? Come and see Jesus. Come, present it to the Lord. That is a miracle in itself. My friend, my question, what kind of overturning do you want God to do today? Because as we are learning, God will do so. God's mercy is available. He asks us today, do you want it or not? It is available. Do you want it or not? He will not force himself. He will not force his will because he gave us his free will. Today we can decide that. Even with a little obedience, God can turn it into good. Even if whatever you're carrying, whatever you're praying for, seek God today. I'd like to end today by saying, I'm a reluctant preacher today. Ano ba yun? Bakit ako nun dyan? You know, I got to know the Lord when I was 13 years old, personally. My dad and my mom brought us into community, a different community, way before when we were young, like 7, 8 years old. And yeah, we loved it. But at 13 years old, I made a personal relationship with the Lord through that community, that youth community. And 23 years later, I'm still here. You do the math, okay? So, at 13 years old, I need to confess to you that what made me stay in community is not actually the Lord. It is food. There is food. Yeah? And there are girls. You know, we live in a very small place in Las Piñas, and there are, not so many people. But in the youth community, different people, different girls from Quezon City, Makati, Manila, and everywhere. Real talk lang, ha? But I started serving. I kept on showing up. Week per week per week. One cheer over the other, every worship song. And I did not stop. And I was called to serve by the Lord, to serve in anywhere that I was asked to serve. Whether I started as part of the registration team and eventually becoming part of the music team, eventually becoming a worship leader. And then, my mentor is Brother George Gabriel. You know him? And I'm thankful for him. Brother George, if you're watching, we miss you and we're happy where you are. But Brother George invited me, want to serve in the feast? Who didn't? You will get to know both churches, So sure, of course, Many people there, yes, of course. So, I want to be human. Can I be personal with you today? Sometimes we don't feel like preaching. Sometimes we also have our reluctance. Sometimes we also have those, impure intentions. When Audie said to me, Didoy, we're going to call you more and more every single Sunday. And I was like, okay na ako eh. I'm okay to serve at the background. You guys. And he said, no. We trust you and we believe in you. And I said, well, impure thoughts, who doesn't want to be with Brother Bo on stage, And the whole, But I also have that feeling of unworthiness. And I really felt that I cannot preach like Bo. And I'm not as pogi and mas maporma with Brother Audie. But I still say yes. What kind of word turning do I want? If God trusts me through my leaders, called me to do one thing, even if I am reluctant, I don't feel like it, I don't feel worthy, I don't feel I can do a good job, I'll take it from the story of Jonah. God could turn my bad preaching into good. And I look at Abraham, Lord, if at least just 50 people would be blessed through the preaching and the feast today, I'll be happy. Can it be just 45? Even just 40? Even if just 10 people? Even if there's just one person who will get to know you more, get to see your mercy, get to love you more today, I will continue to say yes and yes to wherever you call me to. Can I ask you to stand? How many here are ready for God's mercy today? We all need His mercy. My friend, sometimes we feel like we're Jonah. A mix of good and bad. And I also see people. I've met a lot of people who do not like themselves, who feel that their weakness, their sins, make them so far away from God and make them afraid that God will not show them mercy. I've got good news for you. I'm thankful that we do not have Jonah as our intercessor, as our prophet. He was a reluctant. Who do we have? Who do we have? we have Jesus. And I'm very grateful for the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords, the one, the Savior, the one who went through suffering, death, and resurrection, is the one praying for us. Remember when he was on the cross, he said to God and prayed, Father, forgive them, for they don't know what they do. And it's such a comforting thought, my dear friends, that through his death and resurrection, God can bring us from death to life, from debt to abundance, from hurting to healing, from our blindness to our seeing. Today, come into worship to God and just experience his mercy. He's just waiting for you. He wants you. He intended for you to listen to this message. He intended to save you today. Welcome you back home. He intended to heal you today. Will you listen to him? Even partially, will you obey his call to you? Come now, dear friends, dear Feast family, even those who are watching online, let's worship him, our God, our Jesus, our everything. I want you to raise your hands if you are comfortable and have that moment